And welcome back, everyone, for Super Bowl week of the 2015-2016 NFL season. It's here, Super Bowl 50. The Carolina Panthers take on the Denver Broncos in Santa Clara. The Panthers are 5.5-point favorites, and the total in this game is 45. Are you ready? Here are my picks. We're going to look at this game in two ways. I'm a numbers guy, so we're going to crunch the numbers. I'm also a flat earth conspiracy guy, so we're going to look at possible conspiracies. First, the numbers, though. Carolina played teams with a combined 113 and 143 record. Denver had it quite a bit tougher. Their combined, the games that they played against were 128 to 128. So Carolina had a bit of an easier road there. The Panthers were number one in the league in points scored. They weren't number one in yards gained, but number one in points scored. We'll get to that in a second. Meanwhile, Denver was number one in yards allowed defensively. They weren't number one in points allowed defensively. We'll get to that. My point is this. The number one difference between these two teams was the turnover differential. Carolina led the NFL with a plus 20 in turnover differential. And to keep that in perspective, the next closest team was Kansas City at 14. They got 5 of those in that Week 10 game against Denver, where Denver gave up the ball 5 times and Manning was pulled. As a matter of fact, Manning missed a good chunk of the game. He had the injury to his foot, and he was playing so poorly. Up to that point, he was leading the league in interceptions thrown, and despite missing about 6 games, he was still number 2 overall in the league in interceptions. So that's the biggest difference in this game. What we should take a look at is how they got here to the Super Bowl. Carolina played Seattle, and then they played Arizona. In that Seattle game, the Seahawks were coming off a very tough game against my Minnesota Vikings. It was super cold. It was so cold, in fact, it was like the third coldest game in NFL playoff history. Minnesota has a very tough defense, the toughest defense you don't know about yet, and they really softened up the Seahawks. And you saw what happened. Seattle was trailing by 31-0 at the half. They were off their game. The Seahawks gave up a pick 6 very early. They also did something that Carolina's been guilty of all year. They made a game out of it. The score ended up 31-24. Carolina often this year had built a big lead, and only to give it up. You saw what they did against the Giants. They gave up 28 points in the fourth quarter. They hung on to win because they are a good team, but that could come and bite them in this game. In the game after that against Arizona, the conference final, Arizona just kept handing the ball to the Panthers. There were 7 turnovers, giving Carolina a pretty easy time. Meanwhile, Denver had played 2 tougher games, in my opinion. They took on Pittsburgh, and then they took on the champion Patriots. Now, for what it's worth, those 2 quarterbacks, Ben Roethlisberger and Tom Brady, have been to the Super Bowl 9 times, and their record in those games is 6-3. I think the Denver Broncos had a much difficult time. As good as Carolina's offense has been this year, I don't think they've seen a defense like Denver. And had Manning not been so careless at the beginning of the year, the Broncos probably would have given up the least amount of points. So it's going to come down to, will Denver give up the ball to Carolina? If they do, then I don't see this as being any different from any other Carolina game, and this could get out of hand. If they don't, then I think Denver has a very good chance of maybe hanging around, coming back in the second half, and winning this game. And from what happened with when Manning got back in that Week 17 game, he didn't have any turnovers. He didn't have any against Pittsburgh. There was one in the New England game that wasn't his fault. It was a careless play by the running back. And I think Manning, maybe his foot is healed and his other body parts are healed. He's had a lot of rest. I think he does have an opportunity to not give up the ball. That's going to play a very key role in this game. If you are a conspiracy guy like myself, maybe you think that there's some funny business going on in the game. We'll take a look at that. if you were an NFL scriptwriter, you've already got the best game possible. You've got the best teams from each conference. The current face of the NFL right now, Cam Newton, is probably going to be the MVP, facing off against the guy who has been the face of the NFL for the last 18 years or so in Peyton Manning. I think the better story here is to send Peyton Manning off riding in the sunset on that white Bronco, kind of like what the NFL did with John Elway, except I hope Peyton doesn't stick around another year like Elway did. Another thing to consider is Pat Bowlen, the owner for Denver, is very ill. And if you remember that time when they won it, Pat Bowlen had that famous, "This one's for John." Don't be surprised if Elway doesn't do it. "This one's for Pat" one. Bowlen won't be there. He's very ill. Like I said, he was going to miss this one. And it could be a little tip of the hat to a very good owner. Another thing you might want to think about is the money is all coming in on Carolina, about 3-1. And we know how much Vegas likes to keep their money. The favorites haven't done very well in the last 14 Super Bowls. As a matter of fact, they're only 3-10-1 against the spread. Last year, it was a pick'em game, so New England won, but there was no favorite in that game. So 3-10-1 against the spread, and very pedestrian, 6-7-1 straight up. So if you're thinking that there could be any shenanigans regarding Vegas, well, your money should be on Denver. Ultimately, inevitably, I do think the Broncos will be able to keep the ball. I think Manning does enough to win them the game. Don't be surprised if the very last play of this game you see is Denver quarterback Peyton Manning taking a knee and winning the Super Bowl. So I'm going to predict, in a pretty low-scoring game, I'm going to predict the score of this game to be Denver 20 and Carolina 17. So I want you to take Denver straight up and Denver on the money line and take the under. Okay, that's my pick for Super Bowl 50. Good luck to you. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for watching my videos every week and for commenting and subscribing, and it really means a lot. And I'd like to invite you one more time to join our Facebook page, where you have all these other wonderful prognosticators making videos like this. Don't forget, the gioknows Awards are coming just around the corner to celebrate all of the prognosticators who make these kind of videos, and I hope you check that out. Okay, for the gioknows YouTube channel, I am Gio. Enjoy the Super Bowl. And for one last time, let's take the man's money.